Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of what? Psychiatric Sunday. And I just have one thing to ask of you guys out there, and that is the following question. Are y'all ready to kick some Son of Sam ass out there? Yeah! I said, people of the world, say ho. When I say David, you say Berkowitz. David. When I say David, you say Berkowitz. David. Yes, everybody. We are in a great mood today. And why do I feel this way? Why do I feel so excited and so happy? Well, I'll tell you why. Because I'm free. I'm liberated. I'm free. And what are we free of? We're free of the Maury-Terry cult thesis. And it could not feel any better. I have to say, guys, that being free, being liberated from the Maury-Terry cult thesis has allowed this entire investigation to open up. Think about it. Think about how much we're learning now that we're open to the fact that David Berkowitz acted alone. We all of these things that our minds were closed off for before, when we all thought that the cult was real, we would have to deny the reality that we're seeing now coming out of Queen's DA, right? The transcripts, the self-confessions, the letters to the psychiatrist. And think about how much we are learning, how much we are gleaning, not only about the crimes and what led up to them, but also we are learning more about the man himself. And who's the man? Well, the man is the Lord of Life, Disco Dave Berkowitz himself. And so Eric and I have been spending the last couple months now, every Sunday on Psychiatric Sunday, bringing you guys, the clearest and most in-depth insight into the mind of this man. And how did we do it? Well, by using his own words that he put on paper. Now, these letters to the psychiatrist have been a gold mine for us as Son of Sam researchers. You know it and I know it. We are all feeling it, right? All the pieces are coming together. The jigsaw puzzle is coming together. All of this stuff that we once thought was confusing is now making sense. And so Eric and I have been going on this journey together. And one of the things that we kind of left off the back burner until now is the whole notion and the specter of what? Of the family. And of course, what family are we talking about? We're talking about David Berkowitz's biological family, and also, to a lesser extent, the character of Nat Berkowitz as well. But it's the biological relatives that we're concerning with ourselves now. And of course, this show today is only going to be one of, perhaps several shows dealing with this issue of the family, because this family is very interesting. And in fact, the things that are talked about and the way that this family relates to each other in these letters is something that we as Son of Sam researchers absolutely need in order to get what more context, more insight, more information, and we're open to it. We're liberated. We're free of the Maury-Terry cult thesis. Now, just as an aside, quickly, those of you watching live on 9/18/2022, when we're on the live stream, and of course, thanks to everybody out there in the chat. We see all you guys. We see Lydia. We see Moet. We see Gary. We see Ronald Chase. Hey, Ronald Chase is here. We see Patrick Lewis. Ethiopia's in the house, and anybody who I might have forgotten. But I kind of forgot where I was going with that. So listen, what we're going to do is we're going to take the next step. And you all know what that next step is. Why? Well, because it ain't about me. It's about we. So everybody, would you please put your hands together and give a hand to the most dapper gentleman that we all know in this land? The one. The only Eric Galati. Eric, we're free.
The only Manny Grossman. And you say Berkowitz, they say Dave. Somebody says Dave, they say Berkowitz.
Berkowitz.
But on this show, We shout out Richie.
Yeah, that's right. We shout out Richie, of course,
Richie.
for Richie Falco, Richie
Yeah,
Disco.
and we wondered what we'd call it, and you said let's do the family. And in the main protagonist, family member now in this show, family, family is emphasized over and over and over again.
Yep.
It's and this show, everybody, and I told Annie this is actually a coming together of two shows ago that Manny put together beautifully, comparing the apartment letters and other letters by David Berkowitz, called Interlude, and a proper interlude, and last week's The Normal Psychotic. But it's very different. Berkowitz is here present. He's present, but not as upfront. There will be a few letters of his, but we're going to be starting. So I think we should get into it because it's quite a bit.
Actually, Eric, I don't want to start just yet.
Okay.
Before you continue, I want to, as I always like to do periodically, I want to gauge and take your temperature. So I came out with this whole notion, thought about it about 2 minutes before airtime, about this notion of like we're liberated, we're free from this cult thesis. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say before. Yes, tonight at 6 p.m., I'm going on Scott Cardinal's show once again for part 3 to debunk the cult thesis. And this one, I've actually requested him to, Eric, you're not going to believe it when I say it, but I've actually requested this show to be a long show. We might go over 2 hours, which is huge for, as you all know, for me, because I always lose it after about an hour and a half. But we have a lot. Yeah.
May I offer something then for tonight's show?
Sure.
Remember how I've told you, and it's not being pedantic, that what made Maury Terry's book, The Ultimate Evil, so popular was the original subtitle, An Investigation of America's Most Dangerous Satanic Cult. And now I've started to question the last line with new evidence linking Charles Manson and Son of Sam. Now, how do we interpret the new evidence? Was there previous evidence? Should it be with new evidence that links? Should it have been that links instead of linking? It makes you think.
It does make you think. But, getting back to this notion of being free and being liberated, I'm kind of like curious what you think. If you have any thoughts of this, this notion of freeing ourselves from this yoke, in my opinion, of the
Yes.
cult thesis.
Yes, because then we get caught in a dark abyss of conspiracy theory, which is not a theory. There's not even a thesis nobody's done the scientific research. It's morbid to be in this cult theory, and yet where's the evidence?
Exactly. And
the cult theory is damaging because there are true crimes he reveals and tragedies like the suicide of Andrew William DePay Jr. And yet, where's the proof that everybody is interrelated?
Right. Exactly. And your whole thought of it being a dark hole and abyss is so true. It was really comforting when I was a true crime conspiracy theorist back in the old days, and we would just have discussions with each other. If I would meet someone on the street and the Son of Sam would come up, and if they had read The Ultimate Evil, it was a great talk. Oh yeah, the process. Oh, can you believe the process came into under my? We just would again do this thing called the circle jerk, where we just would read passages to each other and then and think they were factual. But again, where did it get us? It got us nowhere. At the end of 40 years, we were no further advanced in the story of Son of Sam than we had when we started. And that's why I'm so excited about this whole notion of being free from it, because it allows us now to be open to this new material. And think about how much we've learned, Eric.
Oh, we've learned a great deal. And I mean, I have to say this before we start. Okay, if the show's going to be a bit long, I have to say this. It's the truth. And nobody here is taking advantage of anything. You, Manny, embraced the ultimate evil differently than I. My experience was factual conspiracies when I lived in Italy in the years of lead and strategy of tension, which my mind immediately said this is true without being a fanatic. You loved it, and yet you showed what a centered, strong person you are, to have the courage. It takes courage to break through. People don't like that word and say, wait a minute, I've loved this. It's like a parent with a child. but you're doing wrong. There's something that's not right here. You went, and I think that's because you were active. You physically went out.
Yeah, I went out to actually talk to people,
Yeah.
and once I did, I realized there was this cognitive dissonance happening. No one in Yonkers, including people that Maury Terry talked to, ever heard of any of this stuff happening before they read the book. And that coupled with little cognitive dissonances that I had from reading the book initially allowed me to just be open enough to get to the point where we are now. And I could not be happier about where we are now. I think this is wonderful what we're doing. I think it's historic. I'm very glad to be a part of it. And I'm also glad that, again, it ain't about me, my friend. It's about we.
Yeah. And the we who are writing in, all the people who support us, and thank God you're not
Exactly.
a police officer, because you've been able to do what certain people wanted to do and were just brushed aside. Police dispatcher Wheat Carr, Tommy Chamberlain and Peter Intervallo, Chinotti later on, just brushed aside. You're accomplishing a lot more, and you've done a great service to people to
Well,
open their minds, to be logical, to analyze from all
absolutely.
different perspectives. And you don't hate Maury Terry as people think, because you recognize what's positive.
I do. I am very pissed off, though, as it's just a human being, as any human being should. When we're lied to and manipulated, I get angry about that. So I'm angry at the behaviors of Maury Terry, but I didn't never knew Maury Terry the person, so I can't love or hate the guy.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, Eric, we got we got quite a bit to do today. This is
Oh,
exciting.
and I'm going to do my best reading. I'm not acting. I'm not going to make believe I'm a woman, to emphasize things. And there will be certain long passages from the main family protagonist, but it's extremely revealing. You know, it's like reading something with spies, and yet you don't think so. But I'm going to point things out. I promise every one of you, I'm not trying to mislead you or infer you anywhere, make inferences that are false, and neither is Manny. So,
No, we're just going to get into the actual words and our
mm,
interpretations of them. And my default position is, if people don't like what we're saying, if people disagree with us so vociferously that they think I'm a member of a cult or any of this stupid stuff that has gone around, simply tune out, change the channel. I don't watch people that I hate. It's just not something that I waste my time on. So
and
in
if you
either
disagree, you can even come on, but at least express yourselves intelligently.
call
We're not
in.
here to be contentious. We're not God.
Exactly.
We don't have the thorough proof.
Exactly. All right, Eric. So we might as well just get into it.
Yeah.
Psychiatric Sunday, the family. And of course, remember, guys, this is just part one of what are going to be several exposés on the family, because this story is just so deep from having read all of these letters that exist in the psychiatric files. And I say again to the audience out there, what are you guys doing? Read these just like we are. Find your own things, bring them to me. Maybe we'll do a show on it. Maybe you'll discover something that we didn't, and that's the fun of this. But yeah, we're just reading these letters. So Eric, I wanted to get into something before, and this is new. I didn't show this to you yesterday when we were putting
That's
the show
great.
together.
Well, just like me with writing notes, an active
Correct.
mind doesn't stop thinking.
So I was thinking about this today, and I thought a great preamble to all of this would be Berkey's secret thoughts about his family, and then because this is sort of the underlying theme, right? My
Yeah.
natural family, and we're talking today about his natural family, not his adoptive family. I tried to feel something for them, something deep, but I can't. Betty Falco, his mother, doesn't even know me. I'm nice to her, a deliberate niceness. I seem kind, lovable, amiable, but I really don't feel anything for them. I've written my mother often, but it was all phony. Everything I said to her was phony. Hello, keep well, I love you, take care. This is bull. I'm really tempted to say the opposite. I
That's
got th-
perfect.
I
That's
got three
perfect.
I got two more examples of this. Reasons for seeking her, his mother, via Alma. This is the adoptive liberation. This stands for something with adoption. 1, out of curiosity. 2, out of a need for answers. Who was my father? Why did you give me away? Why was I born? Who was my sister? 3, out of a need for companionship. And 4, to kill her and or hurt her. And then this is the pièce de résistance. Around her and her family, I always repressed my true feelings. Behind my mask, Richie nice guy, I was filled with anger and rage towards her. With absolute control, I managed never to show or verbalize this. In the Good Housekeeping article, she told of the way I stopped coming around before my capture, how I got totally lost in my delusions. Well, she's wrong. To be frank and honest, I felt myself losing control. I mean, I was getting a very powerful urge to kill most of my natural family. I fought hard to keep these thoughts from becoming actions, so I just stayed away altogether. So interesting that this guy wanted to kill them. He hated them. He pretended to love them. That's kind of interesting to me. And especially,
I think it's very, very interesting. I mean, it's very rich, and it adds to the complexity. I don't have the answers for
exactly.
what we're going to do now, but it adds to the complexity of all of this. And actually, what you read there, I feel sorry for Nat
Uh,
Berkowitz,
I know.
because that preamble of the two July letters, which we're starting with, uh, in, in reverse, one from 1980, July 14th, and then one from July 1979, Without a Day, by
Mhm.
Betty Falco. The first is by Berkowitz to Abrahamson. Um, this first one, and you'll read this, Manny.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Is revealing about what he says about Nat Berkowitz, whom in other letters he says, I loved him more than anybody, and also Pearl, who died, his adopted mother, Nat and Pearl Berkowitz. It's very, very revealing about this defective mind.
So
But
I'll just read the last paragraph of this letter,
last
Eric.
two, it starts the visit and ends with next
Sure.
visit. They're little
So
paragraphs at the bottom.
So again, everybody out there, we want you guys, we are not hiding things. This is all public, and we want you guys to not only be there right with us, but fact check us. I mean,
Yeah.
here's the date. Okay. Go look at this letter yourself. So the actions of Johnson and
No,
Rubens.
down below, man.
Okay. The visit between my father and I was pleasant. He's much too passive to be of any value to me. The man is always trying to reason, to think in the abstract. This is his flaw. Really, he ought to be more straightforward. The man is too fearful of this power-crazed Rubinstein. To me, however, Rubinstein is dirt. Lastly, if the sea gets rough, stay calm. Land may be over the next wave.
Okay, this little thing actually opens up to just what's going on with him and his family, and up until this very day, how he uses people. His father is too passive. No, because his father is not emotionally open. He can't control the father of any value to me. He's a utilitarian, and he's always trying to reason. Yeah, you don't want people to reason. You don't want people to think. So this is just a little note I wrote. The Lord of Life cannot control Nat, but can secretly, surreptitiously make his biological family dance to Disco Dave's music. He is laid back like a true maniacal predator. The biological family doesn't even conceive what he's doing. The father would have.
Exactly. It doesn't seem that way. And we should get into some letters in future episodes now that we're bringing in Nat Berkowitz as more of a character. Nat Berkowitz is one of Nat's nicknames for Dave, for Disco Dave as a kid, was Sneaky Dave, because David was always trying to sneak around, skulk around, trying not to be noticed. Very important things later in his life for his jobs, called the Son of Sam crimes. But it speaks to your observation, Eric, that this guy Nat had Berkowitz's number.
Yeah, and something what's quite interesting? I never like the saying like father, like son, because people are sometimes cruel with that. But what we're going to reveal now, because you found a letter from July of 1979, and also what he writes of his father. This is around the time the father actually allowed himself to be interviewed by the Queen's District Attorney Assistant Lifer.
Right.
What we're going to find is that it's actually, and I'm not being sarcastic or Freudian, whatever, like mother, like son.
Yes, and to that end, here's a letter that we found handwritten, so it's going to be a little hard to read. So I might stumble over some of the words, but this is to Richie. Remember now, Richie is Disco Dave. They're all called, his biological family doesn't use David, they use Richie. And this is from David's from Disco Dave's biological mother Betty to Dave. Okay, dearest Richie, Roz got your letter after I mailed one to you, but you were told not to write to her. The new people downstairs have kids, and they open her mail and also tear it up and put the packet under her door for spite. So please send them to Mary. Mary is his aunt. Pretty soon, I'll have a box at the post office, and there will be no problems. Please do as I say. Roz is very upset. Don't worry about Mary. She won't talk, so it won't be for much longer. Okay, so there's like, she wants to keep things secret. She wants to be sneaky.
That
Okay,
frightens me what you just read, because it comes out later with the main relative protagonist,
Susan.
and I don't think Susan even knows that Betty wrote to her son this previously, a year before.
It could be, but
It's very eerie.
we're getting into the nut meat though, because this is going to blow people's minds on the next page. We will have our own privacy. As for mail, glad you are okay. Things are pretty hectic, but everything will by I'm not quite sure what that says, but it doesn't matter. Here's the nut meat. Richie, in your letter, you seem to be getting in on the deal. Now, real quick, what are we talking about? We're talking about a book deal.
Hmm.
This is the book deal for Klausner's book, Lawrence Klausner, what eventually became Lawrence Klausner's book, which he used primary sources like Betty Falco, Susan Sugar, people who we're going to be introduced to. So we're going to talk about this in future episodes, but there was a whole thing happening with this book deal that was like the most obsessed things this family could have ever been involved with, right? Like, Eric, these people were obsessed with this book deal.
Yeah, and they were so obsessed with the Glassman book deal that, insanely, as if only one book on a topic can be read, they were violent psychologically against Glassman and what would happen with Abrahamson.
Right, but that's for another
Yeah.
thing. Here is, in my opinion, something very insightful, like mother, like son. Richie, in your letter, you seem to be getting in on the deal. Are you by chance making a book? If so, good. Whatever you do is okay. Get in on the deal. Moet, this one's for you. The world is going to pieces anyway, so let's say fuck it.
That's
So
a
first,
mother writing.
that's a mother writing to her murderer son. Notice that not one mention of the victims.
No, and we're going to have a ceremony about the victims. We'll plan it. I have an idea.
Okay.
With a bell ringing, and we read each name alphabetically at the beginning of each show.
Well, we'll see about that. I don't. We'll talk about that off the air. I don't want to rain on your parade, but as a
No, I
producer,
know.
I might overrule that.
You know why I get that? What you wrote there. It's so cruel.
It's so cruel and crass. It's all about money. Read the next one. But let me in on it. We can use a lift. As for me, I would like to move near to the kids. I'm on in years and feel that soon. Her car don't run, and when it did, there is no gas. Okay, so she's like talking about she's trying to elicit sympathy from her murderous son, her multi-murderer son,
Mm-hmm.
to get them in on a deal for a book to get money. Not one word of victims, and of course, here's the phrase where, like mother, like son, the world. We know that Berkowitz probably got that genetically now from his mother. And I'm just kind of like making fun of this and poo-pooing it, but Berkowitz loved using the term "the world." That was like one of his favorite terms.
Well, of course, he's the Lord of Life, and she reminds me of the psychotic mother with the gangsters led by James Cagney, who has a mother complex. He's attached to her. They're psychotics, though. They're murderers in white heat. Insanity in the family, it makes you think.
So, Eric, moving right along, because we got a lot to get to today, and we're trying to weave a narrative which will become apparent, of course, as this show goes on.
Yeah. Now here we're going to touch upon an uncle he loved and what the uncle's habits were, And this answers for you, Manny, perhaps the roaming. So, Manny, this would begin with my Uncle Irving,
Got it.
and the first part ends with he was friendless, and then I'll take you to what other paragraphs?
My Uncle Irving I loved very deeply. He was such a wonderful, quiet, and mysterious man. Rarely did he venture out of the house except to go for long walks. When he went walking, he was gone for days. He loved the solitude and the mountains, and this is where he went. Irving was a most amazing fellow. However, all his life he never had a friend. He was a total loner and recluse. Uncle Irving died alone and was buried alone. He was friendless.
Hmm?
Yeah.
David roaming, going on long trips,
It's
influenced by his uncle.
yeah, it sounds like he was heavily influenced by his Uncle Irving.
Yeah,
Irving Schwimmer right here.
Schwimmer. That's the mother Pearl, Pearl Berkowitz Schwimmer. Her maiden name was Schwimmer. And now down to paragraph 10 that begins my mother and ends with vicious children.
My mother was extremely attractive, I was told. This was when she was a child and adolescent. However, she was one of the younger kids in the neighborhood. All the males would flirt with her. This, of course, made the other girls who were a little older than her jealous. So they teased her and pulled her hair. They also did other things to torment her, as would be expected from vicious children.
That reminds me of when he writes about he would be spat at or people didn't like
Right,
when he was a child.
right. Exactly.
Mhm. And page 2. And here we get his patriotism and militarism. This is all from the Berkowitz family. One, two. It's the first 4 paragraphs from my mother down to in an office.
My mother went to college for a few years, but she never graduated. She fell in love with my dad, Nat, and she went off with him into the service. They both served together down south in an army base. She was very devoted to this nation and to my father. I believe it was called the Woman's Army Corps back then. She was assigned to a clerk's job and worked in an office. My father was a master sergeant. Because of his skill at keeping books and storing surplus, he was assigned to the quartermaster unit. I forgot my mother's rank, but I'll have to check with my father. During World War II, my father spent a lot of time in the Pacific. He was stationed in Guam. His job was to supply the men on the front lines with supplies and order the supplies from the States. However, I forgot the exact job my mother had, except that she worked in an office. So, of
And
course, these are now his adoptive parents. We got to remember
yeah,
that.
the adoptive parents, whom he said he loved more than anyone else, and it seems also his uncle Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here we go to May 17th, 1980. The first 2 paragraphs to Dr. Abrahamson.
Dr. Abrahamson, thank you for your letter of May 15th, which informed me of Glassman's book. You yourself don't seem to feel threatened by it, so I assume that it will only recapture some of the historical events in his book. I do hope, however, that he doesn't attempt to portray me as a deranged madman or something of this nature, but I'm sure that you've convinced him long ago that I was totally sane at the time.
Now, the reason why I chose this is because we're going to come across synonyms to the word threatened. Within the letters of Susan and what she reveals about the family, there's always fear,
Hmm.
threat, distrust. There's something behind the curtains of Oz that frightens them. Okay, and now the last one paragraphs beginning with there is and ending with to reach me soon.
There is something very important which I was going to hesitate to tell you until I checked it out further, but I will tell you briefly about the matter. On Wednesday afternoon, 5/14/1980, I received a 14-page typewritten letter from Susan Wishengrad Sugar. She, if you recall, was the author of the Good Housekeeping article. Anyhow, the letter was most disturbing, and it prompted me to immediately call Mr. Rubenstein. I was on the phone with him for half an hour. It seems as if my mother, Betty Falco, has gotten into a real jam up with Klausner. Or even better, Klausner has done irreparable damage to himself. Now, everybody out there, Klausner is another author of the book. He's going to write a book on Son of Sam. Okay, just so we're
Mhm,
all aware of who Klausner is.
mhm,
Falco, it's weird that he calls his mother Falco.
mhm.
Falco has sworn that she never talked with Klausner or gave him information. So either she is lying or Klausner has simply fooled McGraw-Hill into thinking that she has been collaborating, only to be supplying the publisher with bogus and phony tapes, recordings of the interviews. We will have to discuss this later, for it is very complicated. Nevertheless, Mr. Rubenstein will thoroughly check the matter out. 2, he instructed by me he was instructed by me to phone Susan Wushengrad, and I expect the results of the conversation to reach me soon.
This is very important. It may seem, people may say, well, this is about book deals, writing, but it's revealing. First, it links to the letter that she wrote about getting in on the deal. And then she swears that she never talked with Klaus Snow or gave him information. What game we will see is Betty Falco playing with everyone?
Right. Sneaky Betty Falco, the one who wants money.
Yeah. Okay. So now, May 25th, 1980, page 2, the first 2 paragraphs, my friend.
Okay. Also, when Klausner did approach my mother, he did tell her that if she didn't cooperate, then he would obtain all the information he wanted via the Good Housekeeping article. He told her that her cooperation was not imperative. All this is in Susan's letter, which I'd love for you to read on a strictly confidential basis. But when I figure out a way to get it to you, and if you promise to return it instantly, then perhaps I will allow you to read it. The letter is extremely informative. Susan mentions you in the letter, so I assume that Rubenstein told her about you. Still, when I meet all of them in mid-June, then I will explain my collaborating with you. I'm sure this will clear up all the mistrust and may help you get an interview with my mother and sister. So
Once again, mistrust.
right, it sounds here like the family is threatened by Abrahamson, mistrusts him, but yet they somehow trust Klausner, which is kind of strange.
Yeah, and at
And
the same time, uh, this is why I question the relationship of Abrahamson and Berkowitz. Is it really that of a physician and patient? He says, I will allow you to read it.
right,
No,
right.
and if you promise to return it instantly, but then that promise is going to, we'll see in the next letter, be reversed.
Now, here's just a quick question from the audience, and I think these are very valid questions because we should know these things. Who is Mr. Rubenstein? Mr. Rubenstein is his lawyer, is Berkowitz's lawyer,
Mhm.
a gentleman by the name of Seth Rubenstein. Okay,
Whom he speaks of in being a conduit to conveying information and working with him and his family.
right.
But then he calls the guy pure dirt, as we see in that opening letter.
The Rubenstein.
Yeah, I
Oh,
believe.
right, right. He called him Rubenstein. He called Rubenstein dirt.
Yeah,
So
and that's in July of 1980. After these letters, he calls him
after these
dirt.
letters. So clearly there's some issues that we're going to have to deal with family intrigue, this book deal, people getting pissed off at this person. We're going to have to unpack all this. We're just starting that today. So Dom Tulipso, of course, brings up the excellent point. And they said Berkowitz couldn't write. He writes like a lawyer. Exactly.
Oh
And we're
yeah,
going to
he writes well, and his cousin Susan, cousin-in-law, is excellent as a writer.
excellent as a writer too. Writing
Okay.
runs in this family. Even his mother's not so bad.
No, no. Well, people wrote that. Now, June 11th, 1980, his letter to Dr. Abrahamson is what contains initially letter 1 by Susan, but he actually encloses, he might enclose the postscript to that she wrote a few days later, 3 days later, but he does include letter number 2. But this is with the June 11th, 1980. That's the first time it's publicly revealed. So in the second paragraph that begins at this time, Manny, I want to explain to people though that my mother, Aunt Betty's sister, that's Aunt Mary,
That's Aunt Mary,
the
Mary
mother
Sugar.
of Robert Sugar, who married Susan
Married Susan.
Brad, who becomes Susan Sugar.
Right, exactly. And for those who didn't get it, the mother, Betty Falco, Richie Falco, David Berkowitz's mother, Betty Falco, had a sister. Betty's sister was the aunt of David Berkowitz. Her name was Mary. Mary, um, what was it?
Sugar,
Mary Sugar.
Mary Sugar Broder, maiden name Broder, married name
Right.
Sugar. And she
Actually,
is
she might be Wishengrad because I think no, Susan married Robert Sugar, so
no,
it was
she married.
Mary Wishengrad. I
No,
think
Susan is the in-law. Aunt Mary's son is Robert Sugar.
Robert
Susan
Sugar.
Brad marries
Okay,
Robert.
I got it. All right, so Aunt Mary, sister of Betty, has a son named Robert. Robert marries Susan. Susan becomes Susan Sugar. Susan is now the author of the Good Housekeeping article, the cousin-in-law to David Berkowitz, and as we're going to see, becomes very important in the life of David Berkowitz.
Oh,
So at this time, my mother, Aunt Susan Sugar, and her husband are coming up for a visit in late June, perhaps the last week, they claim. Anyhow, this will give me a chance to explain our relationship, yours and mine, and to present your motives to them. After all, they don't trust you, but this feeling is only due to a lack of knowledge.
your motives. This becomes an important word later on. Now, at the bottom of the page, the last three paragraphs that end enclosed.
Enclosed is one of the letters that Susan sent me. Dr. Abrahamson, I'm requesting you not give copies of it to anyone. Furthermore, if a visit can be arranged with my biological family, please do not mention that you read these letters because Susan requested that nobody but me read them. When you are done, please return the letters to Bernice. You have her address, correct? You may make photocopies of the letter, of course. So here Berkowitz is doing a couple wrong things. He's showing a letter that he shouldn't have shown to Abrahamson. Okay, fine. But if you think about it, he also showed it to Bernice.
Yeah, well, Bernice is his confidant. Is she the woman that he is the closest to him that he loves?
Yeah, Bernice Denoda. Yes,
You know that, and
exactly.
Bernice is going to come up in this. What for me, and I'm not trying to spice this up for you, is a kind of urban, suburban, middle class cloak and dagger that's going on here. It's
Hmm.
amazing what goes through these people's minds.
And
And
notice not one mention, of course, of any of the victims in any of this.
nothing, nothing, nothing.
$250,000, absorb it in. With
Yeah.
regards, I noticed a number of new books. Please put in your mind that McGraw-Hill will publish it. I mean, this guy Berkowitz, Disco Dave, he's an idiot because he actually could have become a publicist or an agent or a lawyer or something better than what he became. Of course, anything would be better than what he became. But this was a smart guy who was able to think logically about things.
And you know what you frighten me with? Imagine if he had become that financially successful and at the same time was a psychopath.
Well, there are probably actually a lot of those kinds of people out there,
Oh
Eric,
God.
doing crimes that we don't, that we don't know
Yeah.
about. But
Okay.
okay, so now
Page
we get to the letter of Susan.
Yeah, now this is May 8th, 1980, which was enclosed with the June 11th, 1980 letter to Abrahamson.
Now, I just
So,
want to let everyone know that this letter is a gold mine. However, we are not going to read every part of it because it's 15 pages long.
yeah, we're only
Okay.
going through sections. There might be pages where we do indeed read a whole page, but I'll make it lively for you. I
Okay.
will
So,
not be slow and listen to everything. So we're going only to the second paragraph here, but not all of it. And this and there's a section where I'll stop and tell you I can't really analyze it yet.
okay.
When you write to somebody in prison, that gentleman I can't name who called you, the intelligence agent and police
Hmm.
officer,
Hmm.
he said, remember, when you write to Berkowitz, because somebody said I should be writing to him and I don't really want to, he says, everything you write is going to be opened and read in prison before it's given to a prisoner. That's the law. They do that. So there's something, this is perplexing, but incredible. This is Susan Sugar Wishingrad. She used her maiden name for the Good Housekeeping article.
And
Second
and
paragraph.
and this is a letter from her written to Berkowitz in
Yeah,
prison.
she wrote 4 letters to him. Here we are. There are so many things to say. I hardly know where to begin, but in fact, I'm reluctant to say all of it in a letter because I still feel uneasy about who might get a chance to read these words before or after you do. I'm afraid you will have to do a lot of reading between the lines. Now, she's so open and explicative as we go on. What is the reading behind the lines? What is
Correct.
it that's occult and hidden?
Right.
And she must know that the gods read this letter. And we're going to see where what we will do is that there's going to be two bees presented here. And the opinion of the two bees is inverted when we get to her last letter. She goes on to say, I'm especially concerned about how private and confidential any correspondence between us can be, in view of the fact that the first letter that Aunt Mary wrote to you, in which she specifically mentioned me, explained who I was, which means she didn't know Berkowitz very well, and
Right.
gave you my address and phone number, was never received by you. Remember, I told you about how she got back and opened empty envelope? And then the last letter I wrote to you, a very long one again, with all details about my address and phone number, got lost somehow via Bernice. Bernice is on the tip of her nose throughout this.
Right.
Second page, sections. Now, this, I'm going to mention somebody, but I'll go on. I would never want to do or say anything to make you so angry as you appeared to be in this last letter, and I'm anxious to try to set things straight. I confess I was very upset at first by your letter, which was so cold and angry and different from all the others, which was signed David instead of Richie. We all know you as Richie in this family.
Hold on, hold on. We all know you as Richie in this family. I thought she's sounding here very familiar with him,
Yeah,
whereas in the
that's
page
the equivocation, the ambiguity.
right, whereas in the page before, she's saying that they didn't know each other.
That's right.
I mean,
We all,
I could excuse this somehow. Maybe she just learned about him a month, she'd been calling him
yeah,
Richie for a month, and I don't
people
know.
talk about him. People talk. Oh, that's Richie. You've never met him well. You don't know him well, Susan.
It could be, but it sounds much more familiar to me. And again, this is just me conjecturing. I have no proof of anything, but
Well,
something
it's a very good conjecture, but she points out signed David and not Richie. And look at this, and which in fact wasn't even signed in your in your own handwriting, but was signed in type. And at the same time, I heard from Roz and Betty that they too had received very angry letters from you, letters that seemed so different from the ones they usually get that they almost didn't know whether you yourself had actually written them. Shades of Maury Terry about the letters, claiming that other letters Berkowitz
Oh,
wrote.
oh, right, right, yeah.
Right?
Oh my God, that's a great point, Eric.
Yeah.
Oh my, wait, okay, hold on. We have to rest with this for a second because Eric just noticed something that I never would have noticed and is so important, I think, to our discussion here vis-a-vis Son of Sam. Here is Susan Wishengrad Sugar recognizing that David Berkowitz has the capability to write different types of letters depending on his mood,
Mhm.
which is exactly the Son of Sam letters.
Yeah.
Eric, beautiful.
Now,
Beautiful.
uh, now the last paragraph that begins from the way you have recently written to all of us, I can only assume that somehow, in some way, either through other people or things you've read, or just by virtue of the fact that you are isolated from us and your imagination has so much time to dwell on all kinds of possibilities. Possibilities?
This
Some,
is the this
or,
is where I'm thinking I'm reading between the lines here and I'm not reading very well. This is my conspiracy brain going. This is my old school
yeah,
conspiracy brain. Is she telling him here, shut the F up, make sure that you don't talk?
yeah. Well, she is, she's going quite profound with what she's writing. It's not as if she's saying, it's just your imagination. This is
Right.
coherent thought.
She's
And
scared of what his imagination is going to
yeah,
dwell and
like I
think
say,
of.
there's a lot of fright going on here. And she says, somehow or other, you have been misled about what is actually going on in the minds and hearts of the family. Your most important misunderstanding is with your mom. Now, this woman has been chosen. I'm just going to say, I'm surmising, I'm conjecturing, to be the conveyor of what the family thinks, Manny.
I think so too, because nobody writes to Berkowitz more than Susan Wishengrad Sugar in
Yeah.
such detail and elan.
But the cruelty of this man is that she doesn't know they're dancing to Disco Dave's music. He's using everyone.
Or she knows and she doesn't care because she has her own ulterior motives
Yeah,
here.
I mean, we have to say that. And at the same time, does she know what Betty Falco wrote in 1979? Saying fuck everything and all that?
Yeah, get in
All
on
the
the
letter?
deal. I can use a lift.
Yeah,
Good question. I don't think she did because as time goes on, she learns more about Betty and we'll bring that to the audience, of course.
yeah. So here we go to page 3 at the bottom only. But now this is about Betty Falco, the mother, the biological mother, Betty Falco, Broda, and God bless you for choosing that letter. But she, that's the mother, Susan writes, never tried to be sneaky and kept things from you or maneuver behind your back. That is just not Betty. She, of all people, wouldn't even know how to do that if she wanted to.
She clearly doesn't know Betty, her aunt,
No, no.
because we have that letter saying, "Hey, let me get in on the deal, man. I heard you're doing this. Fuck it. The world is going to hell anyway. Let's get in on the deal." As
Yeah.
if they're secret collaborators on something.
Mhm. So here we go on page
5.
5, and it's one big paragraph that goes into the top of page 6. Now, when we first got the idea about writing a story for a magazine, there were many reasons for it. Many. We did feel that, after all, a lot of strangers were going to be making a lot of money, and it seemed just plain unfair for the victims to get no compensation at all.
Okay, now
Fair
stop
enough.
there. Stop there. Stop there.
Mm.
So now, just reading that, you would say to yourself as a person reading that, "Oh, well, here they are. They're finally going to talk about the victims. They're finally going to talk about the poor victims of David Berkowitz." Eric, carry on.
I consider your family, and that means Roz and Betty. Roz is his biological half sister, as well as your father, that would be Nat, to be victims in this case.
Not one mention of the real
No,
victims.
nobody.
None. Now, one thing I notice, look at this. Look at that carrette. Look at that carrette. Shades of the Son of Sam letter, everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's her. Oh,
Now,
are
I
you?
have to say, just as full disclosure, that even though I'm off the cult theory. When I first read these letters, guys, and Eric will attest to this. I was like, "Oh my God, Susan Sugar wrote the Son of Sam letters. It's so obvious." And it was just something that I was going through in my head. And then I was like, yeah, and she lived on Hall's Terrace North, just a couple blocks, right in where Maury was telling us where the nests were, right? Where all the doctors and lawyers lived. And I immediately thought, was Susan Sugar involved in Son of Sam somehow with David Berkowitz? Now, I just want to say that if you go there in your head, hey, God bless you. I'm not trying to disavow you of it, and I won't say that you're right, and I won't say that you're wrong. But for me personally, I don't actually believe that it did cross my mind.
Mhm.
Absolutely, especially after seeing these carrettes. And when you read the Good Housekeeping article, she uses terms from the Son of Sam letters.
Oh, yeah.
She uses the void has been filled. But having said that, I don't see Susan Sugar being involved in the shootings with David Berkowitz. I just don't see it. All
No,
right,
but she's involved with something here, and she's trying to get him to answer things about money. She's actually saying,
money.
"What are we supposed to do?" So, if I could do anything at all to help them, to give them some kind of compensation, even though they would gladly forego even $1 million, that's a joke, if they could only wipe the
Yeah.
whole thing out of reality and have you back with them again.
Hold on, hold on. Sorry, Eric. This is just too rich. Bullshit. Do you think that Betty Falco, if given a choice between having Richie Falco back and $1 million, tell me what she would pick, Eric?
She'd pick the $1 million. She gave the kid up to the
Right.
Berkowitz. Come on. I mean, she and Joseph Kleiman, the biological, they were hardcore people, and
Yeah.
he says, then I wanted to do it. Then I would want to do it, you
Then
know,
I want right.
reverse it. I knew nobody else would, but most of all, and I really mean this, our main intention was not to make a bundle, but to give the other side of the story.
Mm.
Now, this is what I can't stand. This began in the 70s. It took place everywhere. We were all upset about the kinds of articles that were being printed in the media about you, all depicting you to be a monster and all distorting the truth about your background and Betty's personal history. We knew a side of you that no one else did, and we wanted people to try and see you in a different light, as a human being, not a fiend, as someone with problems and feelings and sadness and dreams, just like the rest of us.
Wait,
We
hold on. No, carry on, carry on.
just this sentence, and then I got to cross-refer to a previous show.
No, no,
We
go
thought
ahead, go
that
ahead.
if people could see that you were a human being just like the rest of us, that they would understand that this kind of thing could happen to any of us, that we are all in the same boat with the same potential for success or failure, for happiness or grief, for sanity or insanity. And you know what I wrote in the margin?
What?
Gadgetsec. Do you remember when I did that research for the preamble of the
Yeah.
Gadgetsec show with you and Jason? And a man of science wrote from London, we all, by our nature, are potentially cannibals. And I says, who wants to eat human beings?
Yeah, I'm not.
What type of logic?
And also, Eric, I don't think I need to tell you or the audience this, especially those of you who've been with us since the beginning. This is shades of exactly what David Berkowitz wrote to Abrahamson. He was like, I want everyone to see me as normal. I want everyone to see that anyone could be this way, that anybody has the capacity to become a psychotic murderer just like I was, and that I'm totally normal. Eric, this is the exact same thoughts, the exact same things she's saying. It's almost as if her and Berkowitz were coordinating this.
You know, I was just thinking that, and she's still alive. Should I tell people where she's living?
No.
No, I won't. I won't. I won't. Okay. It's just my enthusiasm because they wouldn't believe it. Okay. Let me just say that when I told you where she lived, I had found it. Half your body fell through the floor, the other half went through the roof.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever it was that caused you to do what you did, we hoped that by shedding some light on your story, by sharing what we knew, that it would help people understand how close we all are to you. She doesn't even know him, whether
Right.
we like to admit it or not. In
Oh, she may be meaning how we as the human race, how close we, but maybe, yeah, you're right. That could be read two ways. She could be
two
talking
ways,
about
it
her.
could be.
Right. Okay. Go ahead.
Because she says read between. In sum, we wanted to set the story straight as far as we knew it from our own very limited point of view, and it is limited, arrogant, and hopefully make some kind of useful contribution that would help people rather than exploit them. What is it's an exploitation to take advantage of writing about crime and superficially about victims.
Exactly. Now, you let the cat out of the bag, Eric, so we're gonna have to let the people
Did I do
know, the
something
people of
wrong?
the
Tell
world.
me.
No,
There's
you didn't
nothing
do
yet.
anything wrong, but you let the cat out of the bag. So I'm not gonna give the exact address, of course, but let's just say that I've been telling people that I'm on this psychic wave, this morphic resonance with Son of Sam ever since 1993. Well, it just so turns out that this Susan Sugar is alive and well and living, well, let's just say, very close to where I live. Extremely close to where I live. In fact, probably could not be closer to where I live. But given the fact that I don't want to advertise where I live, let's just put it this way. It's very, very strange, and I believe it's part of this morphic resonance
Yeah,
that
I
that
believe.
Susan Sugar ended up where she did, living where she did, presently right now.
Listen, truthfully, if you want to scold me and reprimand me that I shouldn't have said anything, I was so enthusiastic and
That's okay.
involved.
That's okay. It's okay.
Okay, now we skip to page 11.
Okay, hold on one second. Yeah, page 11.
Okay, and in mid paragraph, after all is said and done, I really do believe that it is your family, Roz and Betty and Mary, etc., that you can really trust above all. This is where you're brilliant when you chose the family, because it pops up again. If you don't feel that way now, I hope you will someday. We have never done anything to hurt you. And if we've hurt you, it has certainly never been intentional. And we would hope that if things ever get confusing to you, that you can be sure of one thing above all, that you can trust us and rely on us. Yeah, but they can't trust him. Please be frank about your desires. If you have reasons for not wanting to make your family visit, we will listen and try to understand. If you want only to see Roz or Betty or Mary or me or whatever combination thereof, just say the word. But we do hope the answer will be yes. Mary especially would like the chance to visit you before she leaves. Now, this underlining there, I believe Berkowitz did that for Abrahamson,
We
unless
don't.
you did it.
It looks like this looks like a Berkowitz right here. This
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
right
yeah.
here.
He did that because it's the same type of, let's say, magic marker ink that he puts letter number one for
Right.
Abrahamson. Now, I wrote here, Berkowitz told Abrahamson Susan's article was inaccurate. He says that to him.
Was inaccurate.
Was inaccurate. Yeah, it wasn't. Inaccurate. So what she writes here is Mary is a devoted aunt, as I'm sure you realize. And she goes on, as far as my comments on the success of the Klausner book, I'm not sure Bernice interpreted what I said correctly. Bernice comes into the act again. But at any rate, I certainly have no way of knowing how the book will be received. I can only hope, for your sake and ours, that it is not the success they want it to be. This is absurd because they have their own narrative. There is a good chance that it will bomb out, if only because it is secondhand information and a lot of time has passed and all that.
She sounds just like Berkowitz here.
It's the same. It is. It is.
It's the same language.
Reading between the lines. Signed Richie, signed David. You know, if you really get into the dark side of this, it's frightening. What? Let me ask you this. It just came to my mind. What if he actually wrote this letter and sent it to Abrahamson?
You know, you have a point there because some of the writing is exactly his.
You've made me think this right now. What if he wrote this and gave it to Abrahamson?
We're getting conspiratorial here, but that's okay. No, it's okay. We're allowed to. I don't think that any of this, even if it's
she wrote it. I think she wrote it, but you know, you've made me think of
there's so many tropes in here that are similar exactly, not only exactly to his thought patterns, but the exact same writing.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm really now wondering about this, and of course now I'm wondering if she did write the Son of Sam letters. Like I'm effed up on this.
Yeah, and then you're wondering, what is he thinking of her? A year, almost 1 month shy of a year after July '79, and the letter he got from Betty Falco. He's sitting back laughing. He's looking at them dancing in his discotheque. Ha ha ha. You think this is a game of chess, my dear? It's not even checkmate. I haven't put the board out. You think you're playing. You're not.
That's great.
Okay.
I think, listen, we're just conjecturing here. A lot of this is, we're not, we're having fun, but I have to say, when I read these letters from Susan, my initial thought, the thing that struck me the first thing was shades of Son of Sam letters, echoes of the Son of Sam letters. Anyway, so page 12.
Yeah, well, at the bottom. But on the other hand, I know what kind of effect a large-scale publicity effort can have on these things. And if they go all out to sell it, they just might be lucky. Now, you added on these last 4 paragraphs. Do you want to read them?
Yes,
Yeah.
I chose these. I'm not going to read everything, but I think what this is here, I was informed about your recent letter in Playboy, and I was very impressed with it. You are yourself a fantastic writer. I envy your talent, in fact. And what you said was absolutely true, right on the mark. I admire all your recent efforts to encourage a change in rules so that the victims get a share of the profits and to discourage the success of This sounds like David Berkowitz here.
It is. It's rather eerie.
But
it's rather eerie.
But if this is Susan Sugar, My conjecture here is that she's buttering him up. We're gonna see that she, talking about read between the lines. What I'm reading between the lines from Susan Sugar's letters is that she wants to be the author of his biography. And she wants him to give her the permission to do it and to give her the contract to do it. And I think that this here is her way of buttering him up, right?
Yeah. It's,
Uh,
it really, we're having fun. That's nerves, but it is frightening, some of this. If you really get deep into it, it's rather frightening. You're going to proceed, or is that it with today's program?
that's it for this. But Simone Nyman has a question: is Susan his birth sister? No. Again, Simone. Susan Wishengrad Sugar, the author of the Good Housekeeping article, which is in the Psychiatrist files for all of you guys to see, is David Berkowitz's first cousin in law. Susan Wishengrad Sugar married Robert Sugar, who was David Berkowitz's biological first cousin. So she is not blood related, but she is related via marriage. And as we can see here, she's clearly taking the reins in handling Berkowitz
Yeah.
as the family representative.
Yeah, and who knows who in the family might be using her, and we're going to come to that.
So we have this postscript here.
Yeah. Now, this postscript is not the postscript that you put in a letter, P.S. This is a letter entirely, it's
In
on
of
its
itself.
own, and the whole thing is very important. It's May 11th, 3 days later. Dear Richie, this is written as a postscript after a conversation I just had with your mom. She told me something I hadn't previously known, that you have been giving all of Rosalind's, who's also known as Roz, and Betty's mail. Betty is the mother, and I guess mine and Aunt Mary's, right? That's her mother-in-law, Robert's mother, Aunt Mary. She questions, also mine and Aunt Mary's, right? As well as your mother and Rosalind, to Bernice to hold for you because you don't have enough room in your cell to keep it all. I can't help but think that this is a very unwise practice on your part, and I must insist, really, that from now on, if you have no room to keep these letters, then please return them to me, all of them, along with your new letter. She's taking control.
She's taking total control over Disco Dave right here.
And you have to ask why. What is it about Bernice? Then
And why is Susan so worried about all of this? What does she have to hide?
And she claims she hardly ever knew him, only by name.
Correct.
I am enclosing some stamps to help you do this, but if you need more, let me know. It is absolutely crucial, if we are to trust one another, once again, trust, mistrust, that
Right.
whatever personal information passes between us be kept strictly in the family. Regardless of how you feel about someone else, whether it is Bernice or anyone else. Please honor this one request. Send our mail back to us, or else keep it safe in your position. And
This is
Barrett, she writes, or if you prefer, simply destroy it after you read it.
I'm sorry, Eric, but this is directly out of one of the Son of Sam letters. Honor this one request. Send our mail back, or else keep it safe in your possession. It sounds exactly like the Borelli letter.
You see, you made me think. I didn't think of this, and we're not being conspiratorial. These conjectures and surmises come. Did she write this, or did he? And because he encloses it to Abrahamson. And now I think of how cautious he is, allowing Abrahamson promise, but you may make photocopies.
Yeah, but then again, this is not his handwriting right here, or is it? I don't think it is.
No,
but let me tell you something. I'm now getting really serious vibes off of this, and I don't like what I'm feeling. Now, I don't want anyone out there to get any crazy notions that now I'm into the cult theory, okay? Because I'm not. But something about this is bothering me, Eric. This wording is too damn close to the Son of Sam letters for my comfort. The vibe, the energy. Please honor this one request. Send our mail back to us, or else keep it safe in your possession.
It should bother you. And
right.
Let me specify to defend you. You're not saying satanic cult, but you're possibly saying another or others, but you're not saying satanic cult.
We're not saying a satanic cult, but if there were others, if there were others, because of these letters from Susan to Berkowitz, to Richie, to Disco Dave, if I could actually see, and because of the fact that Susan Sugar lived 3 blocks away from Disco Dave in Yonkers, I'm gonna just say it. I can see Susan Sugar writing the Son of Sam letters. I can
I
see
agree
it.
with you. And I want everybody to know, Manny and I did not prepare this. This has just happened spontaneously. I didn't even think of this when reading it. And Manny, yesterday, when we spoke about it, never thought of this. This is spontaneous. Spontaneous. Now, she goes on to say, I can well understand now why your mother is so afraid of writing straight out all the things she would like to. We know that that's false from the July 1979. So Susan doesn't know it unless this is Berkowitz.
Right.
And I can certainly understand her anger and extreme pain at your recent letters to her, which was so upsetting that they brought on another severe asthma attack. And now, part 2, Shades of Maury Terry. When we contrast these recent letters with the beautiful ones you used to write in the beginning, and which you wrote by hand,
Whoops.
second page, and signed by hand, and which we knew were yours, we can't help but wonder if someone isn't deliberately trying to turn you against us. We don't know who, we don't know why, but there hardly seems to be any other explanation.
Exclamation mark.
Yeah. Doesn't it strike you as rather odd that Bernice lost the letter I wrote to you? Anything is possible. But when you come to think of it, one wonders how on earth it could have happened. Well, how? People do lose things. And if perhaps she were reluctant, again for reasons known only to her, to let you see it, because she doesn't want you to feel close to us or to trust us. It doesn't make sense unless she has some ulterior motives and wants to get us all out of the picture by alienating you from us. He's already alienated from them. They don't know that.
Right. He wanted to kill them when he first met them. Yeah.
I am not saying this to point an accusing finger, but only to make you aware that there are a lot of possible reasons for things that happen other than just what any one person may be telling you. So please do not give our letters to anyone. That is the minimum we can ask in terms of feeling secure and private about our correspondence. I'm sure you can understand. You know, right now, it makes me wonder, do not give them to any one person. He's doing this to gain confidence with Abrahamson also.
Right, but also I'm wondering if this is where she's asking him to read between the lines, like, don't show these letters to anyone. We don't want anyone to see these letters. Now,
I think she's referring to Abrahamson, as we shall see later. And
right. I'm just reading Gabrielle's thing because I always like her comments. I think it is far more likely that DB wrote Susan's letter than the other way around. Well, all right. So Gabrielle, I think, is saying that it's possible what we said before, that Berkowitz wrote these letters. The only argument I have against it is that this is not Berkowitz's handwriting down here. This is presumably Susan Sugar's handwriting. It may or may not be, but it's certainly not David's.
Yeah, she writes, "Love, Susan. P.S. This is postscript within postscript. I think a personal visit from me would really be helpful in clearing up a lot of this. I hope you agree. Betty told me again how she is eager to be able to see you again
in
person and talk to you. Please give," and then it's cut off. It wasn't.
Please give her the chance right here.
Oh, you have that?
Yeah, at the bottom. Please give her the chance.
Oh, good. I didn't. It wasn't photocopied for me. Mm-hmm.
So right. Moving right along, Eric, and let's let's.
It's fascinating. I do believe she wrote these, but the similarity to Berkowitz is odd.
Now, Peter Capanolo, hold on before you carry on. Peter Capanolo, who we always appreciate in the chat, he wrote something earlier where hold on, where is it? Here. Perhaps the cadence is just familial style. It could be, but the only argument against that is that she was not biologically related to him. She was married into the family, so it
Right.
wouldn't have been a biological thing. Uh,
Interesting. But she's a wishing grad who married into sugar.
correct.
Now, May 21st, 1980 is the second letter.
My
He
birthday,
includes,
everybody.
yeah, he
I
includes both letters. So, uh, first two paragraphs only on this page. Dear Richie, this will probably be the most important and difficult letter I've ever written. I hope you will read everything I have to say and try to think about it as calmly as possible without jumping to conclusions or reacting immediately in a way that you might later regret. In other words, bear with me and let's see if we can work this thing out and keep the family
the family.
together. That
Now
is,
now
after
question
all,
now
the only thing that really matters. Keeping the
here's my
family
here's my observation. If I was writing to a cousin that I never met before, especially who was a mass murderer, I don't know if I would use this language. Let's keep the family together. It sounds way too familial, way too, as if she's had a history with this guy and the family was once together. I mean, I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe I'm just reading too much into
No,
that
no,
here.
you're not reading too much into it. It's a paradox because the other strand is that she knows the other family members well, but not him. And therefore, for their sake, keep the family together. But your point has to be taken also because of so many equivocations here. And it's almost like an espionage letter sometimes.
Right.
So the second paragraph only on this page, she writes, now this is interesting. Last Friday, I received the call from Mr. Rubenstein or Steen, that's the lawyer. And on Saturday, I received your letter. Saturday evening, Aunt Mary and I spoke to Roz, also known as Rosalind, his sister, and Betty, and found out the truth. The answer to your question is regrettably yes. Your mother did give Klausner an interview for his book. Mary and I were both shocked and very upset. As time goes on, there's revelations. After all, her warnings and pleadings and advice to Betty not to speak to anyone before consulting one of us, Mary would have sworn on a stack of Bibles that Betty never spoke to anyone, least of all Klausner. I myself, long before writing to you, and then again just before mailing that long letter, had asked Betty many times to please tell me the truth. Had she ever spoke to Klausner? And she said no.
Notice these quotation marks, guys. It's very superfluous here. I don't understand why there'd be a quotation marks there, but that's very shades of the Son of Sam letter as well.
Betty. She's
Right, but she could just say she said no.
Yeah, yeah.
These are very similar to the Son of Sam quotations. Anyway, listen, I'm just going to point out the similarities to the Son of Sam letters.
You're right in doing that. And of course, these quotations, which are of a different print, could have been put there by Berkowitz for Abrahamson.
True, true.
No, look at the top where it says letter number 2. Scroll to the top of the page. Look at the type of print and compare the print of the
That's
quotation.
Berkowitz's.
Yeah.
That's Berkowitz right there, and it's the same color.
Yeah.
It's the same color.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. It's the same color. So my observation was correct, but I thought Berkowitz wrote this. It seems possibly, but
No, in other words, he did the quotation marks. I'm not saying she didn't do the letter.
Right. So my observation was actually correct. Shades of the Son of Sam,
Yeah.
but it was actually Berkowitz who wrote it. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So we're getting.
So this is what we believed, but we were wrong. I can understand and sympathize with whatever anger and pain you must have been feeling at hearing this. I myself was angry because I too felt betrayed. I should say you must be feeling, not that he felt. I myself was angry because I too felt betrayed. I had, in point of fact, been deceived and lied to. But when I took the time to talk to Betty and Mary and Mr. Rubenstein and Robert, now
Her
Robert
husband.
comes into the picture,
Right.
about it and mulled it over in my mind and thought about it calmly and rationally, I found I was able to feel much differently. This is what we must do if we love each other and if the family relationship means anything to us. We must try to understand exactly what happened and how it happened and why it happened and put it into the proper perspective. I beg you to try to do this. Such emphasis, being so emphatic about meeting an author.
Well, also notice how like it's not about why it happened, how it happened. She wasn't talking about the crimes here. She wasn't interested in the crimes. All she's sitting here talking about is family relations and like none of this has anything to do at all with the victims and the effects of
Never,
his
never,
never.
never.
They're never even mentioned.
Yeah. Um,
Anything else on this letter?
yeah, page 2
Mm-hmm.
at the bottom. And this, Richie, is what frightens me so much. I feel certain she, that's Betty,
Betty.
couldn't have done you any harm by anything she said. What worries me is what she may have said about herself, which, if printed, could be embarrassing for herself and for Roz. I know what I'm talking about because when I interviewed her, I had to summon all my best judgment and all my love for her in the way I handled it. I edited out 95% of what she told me and cleaned up the other 5%.
That's interesting. Why edit out stuff and why clean it up? Why try to change the narrative of what David Berkowitz's mother is saying? That's just my first question.
Yeah. And it, now we're page 3 now.
Yeah.
Page 3 at the bottom only. She had found that she had. Let me. I want to make
Where
sure.
are we? We're on page
The
3.
last sentence on page 3. Where
Okay, right. She had found right here. I'm
she,
pointing it out for the audience.
right. She had found that somehow personal information about the family was being distributed to all parts of the country. And then she was informed that you were giving her letters to Bernice. Now, where does this information come from? Or
Now, who's she? Is Betty the she?
Betty,
Okay.
yeah. How does Betty know this? How does she know it?
Good question. Maybe Bernice let them know. I think Bernice was in touch with the family.
Yeah, I in fact, here's a sentence I didn't put, but part of my reason for believing she never, Betty, meant to be deceitful or sneaky in any way about this was the fact that she wrote to you openly about it in her letters. Now, does she know about that letter from
Does she know about that?
1979?
Right. I don't think she does, but it says here, yeah, Bernice herself kept discouraging her in every possible way. So Bernice and the mother knew each other.
Yeah, so she said when she added this up, she felt she could no longer trust the mail or say anything openly in a letter. Bernice, as you just said, herself kept discouraging her in every possible way whenever she said she wanted to visit you. It seemed as if between you and Bernice, there was almost a conspiracy to keep her away from you, and her feelings were frustrated.
We're devastated.
We're devastated. Thank you. And then down to the bottom of page 4 there, where it begins Richie. Richie, you said to me in your last letter that you have matured and grown in the last 2 years. I beg you now to prove this to me and to yourself by calling upon all the matureness and growth and sympathetic understanding and, yes, forgiveness that you can muster. I ask you to accept your mother for what she is, a simple, naive, emotional, desperately poor person who means no harm to anyone, who never knowingly or deliberately sold you out for money. She wanted the money from that July 7th letter.
Right.
Or set out to betray you, and who never conceived of that awful consequence might result from a simple half-hour interview.
That must be with Klausner.
Yeah. So we go to page 5, paragraph 2 only. Painful though it is for you, you must admit that all of this started with your own actions as the son of Sam. I have no idea why you did what you did, or even what you actually did.
That's a straight.
Doesn't know what he actually did.
Yeah, that is actually a strange line right there, and this is one of those lines that a conspiracy theorist could go down a rabbit hole on. of reading between the lines? Was this one of her threats? I have no idea what you did or why you did, or even what you actually did. Like, don't tell anybody. We don't want anyone to know, David. I mean, again, I'm just
It's all
allowing
over the
myself to go there.
newspaper. She turns the television, the radio on. Maybe you yourself don't understand it. Maybe you do, and someday you will tell me.
That's
Maybe
her.
no,
That's her buttering him up for the story that she wants to write for the
yeah,
book.
maybe nobody will ever know. But however that may be, the fact is, when it comes to being betrayed and hurt, no people were more betrayed and hurt than your mother and your sister,
Who?
who
What about?
entrusted you when they learned about your identity as son of Sam on the day you were arrested. It has affected their lives in irreparable ways.
Not one word about the
And
victims.
not
Not
one
one
word
word.
of truth. How was the mother affected? I mean, though they would like it to be forgotten, it never will be, nor will people ever stop reminding them of their connection with it. Whether or not they give interviews, whether or not they write articles or books, it is something that will be with them for the rest of their lives. And then, page 6,
Oh,
uh,
sorry.
paragraph 4. The last. Let me see. Is this page 6? Yeah, 1, 2. Okay, it's just the last few sentences only. Uh, with here she says one last word about Seth Rubinstein. I was very impressed with him. Out of all the people you've dealt with since this all began, my personal feeling is that he's the first one who really understands the situation objectively, is working honestly on your behalf, and can be trusted to give some good advice and make wise decisions. He was very open and honest with me and extremely helpful. I still can't understand or condone the necessity for this book movie deal. He says there are good reasons for it, but I don't know what they are. And I emphasize, he also mentioned something about a book coming out by Abrahamson, written with your consent and or collaboration.
Hmm.
Here she revindicates me. This amazes me because if anyone is a phony, I know Abrahamson is the prize phony of the bunch.
Phony is the word that Berkowitz used.
Yeah, but we can talk about all of this later. Right now, the only important question is, will you forgive your mother and will you see her? I await your answer, love, Susan.
This is her again trying to cast shade on Abrahamson so she could write the book. My personal belief is that, Susan Sugar wanted to write the book on David Berkowitz. She clearly was a writer on the make. She wrote the Good Housekeeping article. Seashore Mary writes, "Where is the article?" in quotes. I don't understand why we put that in quotes. It's in the Abrahamson file, Seashore, just like all of us have been looking at. It's in there. As a Son of Sam researcher, you should have come across that by now, actually. So the Good Housekeeping article is in there. It's a well-known article. You can read it. You can go see it within 10 seconds. Ruby, if you're in there, you might want to link to it.
And it's so well written that I don't believe anybody changed it.
She was on the make. This is my impression of Susan Sugar so far. She
Okay.
was on the make. She wanted a book to be written about, and she wanted to write that book. She was trying to cast shade on everybody associated with Berkowitz who could have written the book as well. Klausner, Abrahamson. And so that's so far what I'm getting out of this. This is all mercenary. There's very little in here about the victims. Certainly nothing sympathetic about any of the victims. Certainly no victims' names are written here. It
I
just
had
seems
written in the corner vomitory when she was saying you're mature now. What is he? A guy who's finally gone to high school and learns what it is to be a man, so to speak. This is crazy.
yeah.
You know, but I tell you, her letters, we'll take it that it's her, are the most interesting. It really makes you think.
Hold on. So Gabriel, who normally I'm 100,000% in simpatico with, I've been seeing this go into the chat, and I just want to say there's no proof whatsoever that Susan Sugar read Maury Terry's articles. They could have, but they don't mention it. They don't refer to them. She certainly doesn't talk anything about a cult or accomplices. I can see how maybe you think that from that one line. I don't know what you did or exactly, but
Mm,
again, like, this is what I caution people, and this is why I always say when I'm getting conspiratorial, I make the disclaimer to do that,
mm.
because games of telephone can be made in this business like crazy. Right now, there are people out there who think I'm in the process. Why? Because a game of telephone has been played where one lie built on another, and now all these low information people believe it. Okay. So that's not what I'm saying here, Gabrielle, but I'm just saying, like, we can't say for sure that they read these articles and they're responding to them.
Yeah.
Just like I can't say for sure that Susan wrote the Son of Sam letters. It's fun to have fun with it, but right now we are introducing this family into the Son of
We're
Sam
far
world.
from.
And
Uh,
we're far from,
yeah.
yeah, we're far from really knowing, but it's fun to talk about. It's fun to have these conjectures, but I just want to avoid taking something as like fact. She read the articles in the newspaper. She very well might have. In fact, she lived in that neighborhood, but we don't have any proof of it. Is what I'm just saying.
But thank you, Gabrielle. Good point, because
Yes,
you made Manny's mind work.
and
But remember, Gabrielle, the mystery is Susan says she actually doesn't know what he did, but there was television and radio. It was all over the place.
but that actually could provide some evidence that Gabrielle is right, that she did read those articles and she did live in Westchester.
Mhm.
The articles were local to Westchester. It's most likely that she read them, but I just want to say that we can't say it for sure because we don't have any proof of it, quite frankly.
Mhm. So, June 28th, 1980, you return. This
Oh,
is
and I just want to say one last thing to
Mm,
Gabrielle. Gabrielle, please don't take that as a criticism. I actually find you to be one of the most thought-provoking and great commenters that we have. I know you're relatively new to the site, but we appreciate what you write. So please don't take my slight critique personally, okay? All
mhm.
right. So let's carry on.
There are no attacks on this show, Gabrielle.
No.
It's a cultural interlocution, an intellectual discourse. Nobody attacks anyone else here. Okay, so now we go ahead to 17 days after the June 11th letter to Abrahamson, in which the three letters, the one postscript, letter 1 and 2, were enclosed to him. And David is writing to Dr. Abrahamson. And Manny, it starts with the third paragraph during the visit and ends with the following fourth paragraph for the book.
Okay. Now, real quick, right here, this is a letter which you all can look at. It has Susan Wishengrad, who's later Susan Sugars, her address. I want you all to Google Earth this. Notice how close it is to where Berkowitz lived. This is also the exact street that Maury Terry, in his Facebook posts, and I did a video on this, which is in the archives, because I no longer think any of it's true. So I don't want it out there in the public domain. But I did a video called Maury's Nests, the northern terminus, the square where Maury pointed out where all of these doctors, these rich people lived who were heavily involved in the cult, the Son of Sam cult, right? Hall's Terrace North was one of those streets. Okay, so this Susan Sugar, coincidentally enough, lives on the damn street that Maury Terry said all of these cultists came from.
And he was
Now,
correct about that, about
well,
these wealthy people.
we don't know whatever he was correct about in terms of the Son of Sam, in terms of the Untermeyer cult. We don't know because we've never gotten a guest list of who was at those
Mhm.
meetings, so we don't know where they lived or whatever. This was just again Maury's. This is where he went with this. Like we're
Oh, you
going a
never
certain
find who was there. You'll never
right.
find who there,
We're
unless
going a
somebody kept a ledger.
Right, we're going a certain way in this, and Maury went a certain way in this. I think that the way Maury went was wrong. Some people think that the way I'm going in this was wrong. But the simple fact is we have her address right here. And Maury Terry said that Hall's Terrace North by name, he named that street as the northern terminus of what he called the nests where all
No,
the
it is
cultists
Halls,
live.
not Hollis. Halls.
Right, Halls.
Yeah, and
So
by the way,
during
there's two Maurice Nest videos. You did a second one.
I did a second one exactly when I learned a little bit more information.
Mhm.
During the visit between Susan, Betty Falco, and myself, I told them all about you, about Abrahamson. They were suspicious of you at first, but I put them as ease. Nevertheless, so if this is going to be important later on in my show tonight with Scott Cardinal, Berkowitz makes a lot of spelling errors. He even made quite a few spelling errors in the Son of Sam letters that we're going to look at.
Mhm.
Nevertheless, be patient with them, as they are frightened, confused, and just plain overwhelmed at this McGraw-Hill Klausner incident. Betty has also sworn to make Klausner eat dirt. Oh, very like mother, like son,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. At this,
Once Right. Once we talked, we almost had to laugh and scream in anger over the way Klausner said one thing to her and my mother to my father, and another to my father. He said that McGraw-Hill had issued him his own private jet to fly about the world, gathering information for the book.
if that's true.
If that's true, right. Now, we just got the Klausner book. It's actually an excellent resource because it has quite a few of Berkowitz's fire logs in there, which I'm not sure we've seen all of those. And it also has a bunch of new letters that we're going to analyze, Eric, that were not a part of the NYPD files.
Mhm.
So they were written after the arrest. So it was very directly after the arrest, like the 2 days after when he was in lockup. So Eric,
Page
what's the
September 1st, 1980. Berkowitz writing to Abrahamson, second paragraph only, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, my sister is as bad off as my father. She is extremely upset over the coming book. Susan Wishengrad wrote me last week saying that after she spoke to Roz, that my sister was hysterical and angry about the McGraw-Hill business. Apparently, my whole family can sense something dreadful and sinister about it all. They all fear it because of the sensationalistic and unprofessional style. A book and movie that promises to supersaturate the world is terrifying for them.
Once again, these words, dreadful, sinister, terrifying, such exaggeration. The
Yeah, the book.
terror, the terror of having your brains blown out in a car. A man walking around until this day with a bullet. Another woman's a paraplegic, losing a dog, which is part of the family. Molotov cocktails. It's repulsive.
It is repulsive, and again, yeah. Also, the book came and the book went, and nobody cared about it. This just shows how egotistical Berkowitz was, and in a sense, his family was. They wanted to control the narrative. They wanted to be, and I believe Susan Sugar, as an individual, wanted to be the person who told his story, and furthermore, wanted to make that money.
Yeah.
Wanted to make that money, that dirty money, telling the story too. Wow,
Well,
Eric.
here we get to the last Susan Sugar Wishengrad letter. I called it just last night. I wrote in pen the revelation. It it gives us a paradox, an ambiguity of what she previously wrote. It's incredible, and just listen, come to your own conclusions. We're not selling conspiracy, but really.
What part are you going to read?
All right, first page is the fourth paragraph that begins possibly.
Possibly, as you say, this whole thing is just bad on the nerves, and it's my nervousness that comes
Mhm.
through. Oh, what are you nervous about? Your
Yeah,
mother is, as I said, so impossible sometimes that I don't know what to do with her. I can't disown or abandon her, and yet she requires more time and understanding than I feel I have. It's a real problem.
so here
See, I
we
need to
Susan is involved here with uh, being almost like the one who,
um,
who takes care of the family and everything.
right, and this is really, really blowing my mind because to me, it sounded like in her earlier letters that she didn't really know them, that she was brought into this. Certainly not Richie. But now it's sounding like she's had like years and years with them. She's the caretaker. She knows them inside and out. I can't disown or abandon her. These are heavy words to use for somebody that you just maybe didn't know very well. So
You know,
I think Susan knew this family well. She was obviously a part of the family through the marriage,
but not him.
but not him. But we don't know that.
Yeah,
That's
like, oh, yeah, we don't. It could be, oh, you got to meet cousin Richie. You never met
Richie,
him before.
right?
Or maybe she knows him. Now, what I'm going to read here on page 2 is paragraph
Hold
3.
on one second,
Oh,
Eric, because I
oh,
just want to say one thing because we're riffing, right?
I'm sorry.
We're riffing. And so I want to just say one thing. Now, Susan Sugar, again, we're speculating here. She sounds like she doesn't know Berkowitz. Okay. But my question is, well, how the hell did Berkowitz end up in the neighborhood 3 blocks away from Susan Sugar and Robert Sugar?
And he visits Aunt Mary, who
and
lives in Queens County in the village of Flushing.
right, and he knows Aunt Mary, and he visited with them. I think that there's something here with this whole Susan Sugar living on Hall's Terrace. I really believe that there's something here for the Son of Sam researcher to unpack. I'm not saying I know the answers. Okay. I want to just put out that disclaimer. I am not making any claims, but I personally find it extremely coincidental that the person who's writing to Berkowitz, whose style is so similar to the Son of Sam letters, who is just as in her own way cold and callous as Richie is, David, Disco Dave, because there's no real mention of victims in here. She's saying that she's the victim, her family's the victim. Okay. And the fact that she lives 3 blocks away from Berkowitz and Yonkers, I don't know. I think that there's a story here. My spidey senses are going up. I think this could possibly also answer how Berkowitz ended up possibly harassing the Nettos starting in late 1974, 1975, when they still insist that that's when the harassment started. I know that we don't want to go down that road, but what if, again, what if, notice I am not saying that this is fact, but what if Berkowitz knew these relatives in Yonkers as soon as he met his biological parents? He went up there to visit, and he drove by Wicker Street on the way up to visit,
Yeah.
noticing the 2 houses, seeing the name Wicker. He was already in the throes of his insanity, right?
Hmm.
I don't know. I think that there's something here.
There
I
is,
think that there is.
and there's, believe me, you're going to be more dumbfounded now. This is why I call this letter by Susan, the last one we know of, I think, the revelation.
All right, get into
And,
it, my man.
and I'm going to get into it. And that's why I was enthusiastic. I didn't mean to stop the riffing.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Page 2,
Go ahead.
3rd paragraph. Susan to Richie. I'm glad to hear you are happy about the prospect of Bernice's coming to Rochester or wherever. She's now happy about Bernice. Apparently, I misunderstood what I interpreted as a lack of enthusiasm. I know you appreciate her, and I agree you are lucky to have her. Now she says he's lucky to have Bernice.
Yeah, before she didn't trust her.
Yeah. But I did get the feeling that you were happy enough to leave things the way they were, without closer physical or emotional ties. Apparently, I was wrong. I can only hope for your sake that she is as honest and decent as she appears, and you believe
Her to be.
and you believe her to be, and that she doesn't cause you any trouble. Now look at this. Your mother, needless to say, expects the worst any minute. It never occurred to her.
Sorry, Eric. Give me a second, please. I lost it. I got to find it again. Here we go.
Okay.
Where is it? Page 2.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry, audience.
That's okay. Okay, that's it. That's
right
okay.
here. Your mother, needless to say.
I'll go back a bit. Apparently, I was wrong. I can only hope for your sake that she is as honest and decent as she appears and you believe her to be. That's Bernice de Nota. And that she doesn't cause you any trouble. Your mother, Betty Falco Broda, right? Needless to say, expects the worst any minute. It never occurs to her, that's Betty, that her own sneaky behavior is a worse threat to you than anything Bernice is likely to do. Revelation, everything is reversed.
Right. Now the mother's the enemy and Bernice is the friend.
Right. And the word sneaky.
Sneaky Dave.
Right? It's all inverted. It's a revelation. And also, that's why I call this the revelation.
Right.
There is no question that if someday Bernice wanted to make a bundle, she could, as a result of her relationship with you and her knowledge about you. I personally don't get the impression this is what she has in mind. But stranger things have happened and nothing would surprise me.
All about money.
There's no suspicion about Bernice now being in on something. Again, I hope you don't get hurt. It's too bad that because of her incredible devotion and interest in you, everyone jumps to condemn her and think the worst. Hey, Did Susan really think the worst of her, or is that letter written by somebody else, supposedly Susan?
Oh, the previous one that she
Yeah,
wrote?
but a strange, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's
I mean,
defending
it
me.
is just possible that it's just very mundane that over
Yeah,
time
yeah,
she got new
yeah,
information
yeah,
and
yeah,
changed her.
right. I'm not being conspiratorial, but
Right.
look at how different it is. It's the revelation of what Bernice really is, that everyone jumps to condemn her and think the worst. Personally, from what I've heard and seen, not that I ever saw her, but you know what I mean. I like her. I think she's a good
Wait
person.
a second. This is like totally different from what she wrote
That's what I
before.
mean. That's what I mean. And the mother, now she's saying the mother's sneaky. But as a form of self protection, which I learned is a necessity in this life, I always leave room for some skepticism. So if the unexpected happens, I won't be too shocked.
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 Okay.
Okay.
So
Page
Eric,
3.
okay.
Anything
Okay.
you want to comment on?
No, nothing. I'm sort of reaching the end here. I kind of want to
We're reaching the end.
yeah.
We only have the last 4 pages, and it's not everything, although page 4 is important. The bottom of page 3, I can tell.
I can tell you honestly that if your mother hadn't given Roz such a hard time since your arrest, you and she would still have been in good contact and communication. But Betty made it really impossible for Roz to deal with the matter and with you any longer. Now, this, I must stress, is all absolutely confidential, even though it isn't full of details, but I felt you should know at least a little about it so you won't doubt my word. And also, more important, so that anything Betty may write to you about Roz will be sure to take with not just 1, but 100 grains of salt. And check with me if you want to know the real story. So here she is controlling David,
Mm-hmm,
being his controller, his handler. Don't believe what you read. Come to me to have it
mm-hmm.
interpreted. I believe I have a good grasp of the truth after speaking to all parties.
Now, Manny, she says she's not. She says, I must stress is all absolutely confidential. There's no reading in the lines. There's no worry about who reads it. She trusts that he has it and he's the only one. It's very different from the previous letter.
Right. Well, maybe she evolved, like she was
Yeah.
very suspicious in her first letter. And by the end, she's realizing nothing's come of this. Nobody really cares.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just be more,
So the rest of it,
I'm
I'm,
sorry to say that
mhm.
you are probably right about your mother wanting to get some money out of all this. Probably. We look at that letter we started the show with.
Yeah, right.
Um, she's been aggravated. Is there anything else here? Because
Yeah, everything. She's been aggravated since
she's
the
been at it
word
since the word
go,
go, when she
when
kept
she
hearing
kept
about the
hearing
so-called
about the
millions everyone
mhm.
was making. Right. So money, money, money,
Yeah.
money.
And I
And I
guess
guess
it's always been in the back of her mind that she too deserves something, if
deserve
that's what it
something.
was coming down to. Deserves. She would
Deserves.
never deny that your happiness and welfare are the most important things to her. As I once said, I firmly believed she would give her life for you if it would do any good.
My
But
ass, she gave him up.
yeah, but this idea of money has some kind of terrible grasp over her better judgment, and it colors everything she does.
I
I
don't think it
haven't the vaguest idea what her expectations were of Abrahamson. That was one book I felt sure she understood had nothing to do with the money for her, but was rather a way of getting back at Klausner and getting the truth out. I was shocked to learn that she expected money from him too, from Abrahamson.
oh
From now
wow.
on, nothing she does will shock me, but as you see, I don't enjoy dealing with it. As a word of warning, which I feel is essential at this time, you should know that she has always had the hope and expectation that sometime, in
Uh,
some way, I would have another chance to write about you or for you or with you and make
uh-huh.
money that she could get another share in. There you is. She wants to
There.
write the book.
She wants to write.
You're right. And if she ever brings this up, you should be prepared for it.
Son
You,
of I've told her a million
I've
times
told
with
her
that
a
son of
million times.
very son of Sam like Corrette. Okay.
Mhm. Don't want, I don't want, you
That
don't
you
want
don't want.
any more publicity, but she can't accept this because she sees everything you are doing now as a form of publicity and sees no difference between that. and whatever I might write. The
Real
only
quick, real quick, real quick. That she finally came to realize what was in that July letter that we saw in
yeah,
the beginning of the show.
1979.
Yeah.
The only thing I can imagine writing at this point would be kind of an update article, clearly explaining what your feelings are at this time and what you are trying to accomplish. But who would publish this, or whether it would be helpful or harmful to you, or whether you would even remotely consider such a thing, is beyond my knowledge. And I would never dream of taking any
Hmm.
action in the form of writing again without your explicit knowledge and approval. As I
Buttering him
once,
up.
what?
She's buttering him up.
Yeah, as I once said, and it's good you catch that. And as I once said to you long ago, if I were ever to be involved in writing a book for you or with you about the true story, I would be honored. There it is, Manny. You're
Yep.
right.
Yep.
But I expect nothing, and it's not what's on my mind when I write to you.
Yeah, right.
I can't seem to get this through to Betty, however, who, though she wants to hear from you and to be assured that you are well and to send you love and money and stamps and packages also, always is hoping that, top of page 5, to finish that, top of page 5, oh, some money will also come out of this whole thing for her. Well, I'm sure this is nothing new to you and that you've suspected as much all along. The irony is that you would gladly help her get whatever money she can if she would only be honest and open with you, and that she is defeating her own purpose by being sneaky. Now, the revelation that the mother's sneaky. Now, it's page
Right.
5, and we end it with only a sentence on page 6. I know nothing about her asking you for poems. That's really awful. But I can imagine that she might have had it in mind that your letters to her would be valuable, and that Klausner may have been one of those who encouraged her to that end. I don't know where you got the information that she claimed Klausner just appeared at Roz's door and your mom was there too. I don't remember hearing that story from anyone. It seemed to me she was honest, at least about that it was prearranged and that she had asked Roz to be present with her during the interview. Did Betty tell you this coincidence story in one of her letters? She must have been really desperate to seem innocent again, so you wouldn't stop loving her. It's as if Susan's playing the mother and him off.
Susan is totally playing the mother and
Yeah.
him off.
Again, one thing I've learned for sure about your mother over these past months, and it's been confirmed now by some of the details pertaining to this latest problem with Roz, is that, as Seth Rubinstein once explained, she is one of those people who are capable of believing something so strongly as a result of wanting to believe it
Like
that
mother, like son.
yep, that's it. That after I was just thinking that
Uh,
after a point it becomes fact to them to the extent that they would swear on their life by it.
the
You're
talking demons, the demons of 22, right? Wanting to believe it.
right, right. We want to believe it. Your mother may have actually convinced herself at one point that the meeting with Klausner was a coincidence, and she may have had no consciousness of lying to you when she wrote or spoke about it, though again, I myself don't recall hearing that particular version with an exclamation mark. Then
Mm.
I really emphasize one thing is certain. You realize that communication with her can only be done on a simple level. And once that's accomplished, and once you know for sure she is really unreliable as a source of information, even about herself, then you are all set. No more need be said. She wants Berkowitz for herself.
And also this line here, for those of you who remember The Ultimate Evil, Berkowitz wrote a very, very similar version of this when he writes about how this is kind of off color, but he writes about how he was able to get laid. He wasn't a virgin, and he wrote Muff, Nuff said, right? Those of you who remember the book will remember that passage. It's very
Mhm.
reminiscent of this. No more need be said. Nuff
Mm.
said, right? I mean, I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of similarities between the writing styles of Susan and David.
Yeah, and the psychology and the
Yeah.
twists and the twists
Even though
and turns.
even though she's not biologically related. I mean, she might as well she might as well be. She might
Mm.
as well be. All
So,
right, Eric, I'm
um,
reaching the end here. I'm
okay,
losing.
well, it's going to end this little paragraph and just a line on page 6, and we've had it. So, as it now stands, I will receive what I assume will be letters specifically to her, which I will
We'll
read
read.
to her on the phone, not in person, and hopefully her letters to you will get to you and not be returned to me. She said something about signing them with my name, if that would help. Very strange. I'm sure you'll have no difficulty knowing which letter is whose. And it ends at the bottom of page 6, one line, one little paragraph. What a mess! In spite of it all, I'm glad you and I have been able to communicate so comfortably, and I hope it continues. As you once said, honesty is the best policy. And as long as we are both honest, we shouldn't have any problem with each other at any rate. Love,
with the,
Susan.
yeah, with the exclamation part mark, and also why would they have problems with each other? I mean, I don't know. There's something here that's really, really, really. We've read this all this stuff, Eric,
And,
and
and we read it well.
right,
It's a
and
lot, and
it's
we, and
really
we
bothering me.
yeah, it does. It does. It does. But let it bother you, Manny, as a blessing, not as something problematic.
Right, I understand, and I'm not able to come up with conclusions now, but what I can say for the audience, and in my opinion, these letters show a family that's cold. Would you agree?
Very cold. A vomitory that's cold.
Calculating, right? They're always playing people off one another. They're telling this person that, and that person's telling this, and Betty's writing letters to Berkowitz, which contradict letters that Roz wrote, and which contradict letters what Susan wrote. And then also, in my opinion, money grubbing.
Hmm.
So there's bad stuff here happening in this family dynamic, and it seems like, and we're going to go through this in more detail with more of these. We're going to have other shows on the family coming up in subsequent episodes. I personally think that this was an extremely dysfunctional group of people, and they were all coldly and calculating, using each other for whatever aims they were using each other for. That has yet still to be determined. But I have issues with Susan Sugar, and I have to say, in the back of my mind, I wonder. It's just the little thing living in the deepest corner and recesses of my brain right now. Did Susan Sugar collaborate with David Berkowitz on writing the Son of Sam letters? I said it. There, I said it. And that's where I'm going to leave it, Eric.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me, what did Ron Chase say? Is there something he said about fictionalized or real down
Uh,
below?
Manny, go downstairs and ask Susan if she did. Where's Ron Chase? Hold on.
It's much before. It was before.
Goya and Cod, Manny, the time has come. Pour some sugar on me. All right, hold on. Sorry, guys. Ronald Chase, Peter Caponolo, this real story or fictionalized? I don't see what you're talking about. I think it's just way too far up. We'll have to deal with that in the comment section. All right, Eric, I'm done. I have to get out of here.
It was great. It was gives a lot to think about. It gives a great deal to think about. There's
I
no avoiding it.
I really agree. There's a lot, as I said in the beginning. Well, Eric, say your last words to the audience, and then I'll
Well, thank
outro them.
God that I went back and really Friday said, wait a minute, something's telling me to go through these letters more.
Yeah. No,
And
the research that we're doing is very important in my opinion.
well, look, everybody, I hope you listened. I tried to read it as well as I could, not dramatizing, but to convey it to you. Manny did great reading what he read. Think, and think. Don't be afraid to put forth theories, hypotheses, conjectures, but just be honest, to be open. Don't stay like this.
Exactly. And Eric,
Because this
please
material demands that we be open.
agree. And Eric, thank you so much for your work. We'll see you, of course, next week, and please stick around for the end
And
of the show.
what time tonight, so everybody can hear you on
Tonight I'm on with Scott Cardinal, where we will debunk piece by piece the cult thesis That'll be on Scott Cardinal's channel at 6 o'clock, and I put that on my Twitter for everybody. Eric, please stick around. Thank you so much, my friend.
God bless you.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I always sometimes I wonder about whether shows like, is this going to be a good one? And every one of these shows, I always leave on a high, saying, "Wow, what great stuff that we learned today." And I really believe that that's true in today's show. Yeah, the stuff isn't the sexiest and the most exciting material, but in a way, it's really the most important material, I think, of the Son of Sam and Son of Sam research right now, because, well, we already know about the crimes. Berkowitz has written in great detail. He gave a detailed confession. We already know about his apartment, about the letters and the war that he was raging against his neighbors. We know about the intrigue with YPD, and we know about how NYPD kind of screwed up things on their own. We know all that. But what we haven't had until now are these deep insights into the mind of David Berkowitz using his own writings, and more importantly, the insights into his family, and which I believe can help us as the modern Son of Sam researcher to help make sense of these crimes, to help make sense of the man, to help make sense of the whole milieu that was happening in and around David Berkowitz. And we're just starting. There's a lot more in these files that are very revealing about this family. And well, Eric and I are going to mine it, and bring it to you in the best way that we know how. So everybody out there, I want to say thank you so much. Amazing show today. I really appreciate your time and attention. We spend 2 hours together and it flies by. I hope it feels that way for you. Please check out me on Scott Cardinal's show tonight. Tomorrow, Manny Monday is back for a special episode. Eric will be with us. We're going to have a round table. The best minds in Son of Sam research right now will join me, and we will listen to the Maury Terry Queen's DA tape. All right. So it's going to be a very exciting rest of the day today, and of course tomorrow as well. Everybody, thank you so much. And we will see you at the next show. Thank you very much. Take care.